Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 253rd Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss the issue 1 on the ballot that's going to be voted on November the 5th. It's an attempt to take politics out of the congressional redistricting process that takes place every 10 years. Our panel today is Patty Haskins, former member of the Wadsworth City Council and a retired member of the faculty of Wadsworth High School. Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services, and Tom Finley, former vice president of Human Resources Development at Rubbermaid Incorporated. Patty, I'm wondering, before we begin, if you can begin your comment by giving a brief explanation of the current redistricting process and why it's in need of change.
The current process was affected or put into place in May of 2018, when, and at that time, issue 1 was voted on and passed quite substantially in the state, stating that steps had to be taken in the redistricting process to prevent gerrymandering and to prevent and to, not prevent, but to promote a process that provided districts which were fairly divided within the state of Ohio. Now, that particular process involved setting up, and this was actually an amendment to the Constitution of the state, set up a process whereby there was established a 7-member commission that would make or do the drawing and the redistricting of the state of Ohio, which is done every 10 years along with the census. That commission had as its members the governor, the auditor of the state, the secretary of state, and then the other 4 members were chosen by the Speaker of the House of the state and the leader of the Senate, each of which would pick a member of their party and a member of the opposite party to belong to that particular commission. And there were some restrictions on who they could pick and so forth and so on. Basically, what this meant in Ohio is that we ended up with a 5-2 Republican-Democrat division.
Okay.
Unfortunately, what happened, though, when they did the redistricting, they had to submit that for approval, and it was ruled not once, not twice, but 7 times to be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of the state of Ohio. And it seemed as if each time, with each iteration of the renewal or the revisions that were going to be made on this selection process of redistricting, it got worse and less fair. Because of the uproar of that, redistricting didn't happen. And we went through the last few elections with the same districts drawn and no change in the gerrymandered state of Ohio. It was totally ignored. So what was ignored was the will of the people as passed, as I said, overwhelmingly in May of 2018. So here we go with 2024. 6 years later, there is an attempt being made to take the idea of redistricting, or the actual job of doing this, out of the hands of the 7-member commission and place it into what is deemed to be a fair group of people. The bill that is in issue 1 will actually amend what was placed into effect in 2018. It takes out one section, which has the setup of this commission, and adds in new language for establishing a new commission. Now, this commission will be started with the appointment by the state legislature of a ballot board. And this ballot board, it's called a ballot board in the language.
Okay.
That's just the name for it.
Okay.
And trust me, reading through all of this is confusing if you're not an attorney, which I am not. So I'm doing my best. They have this, the legislature appoints a ballot board, which then has the job of selecting the screening committee. And the screening committee will consist of 4 retired judges, 2 of which are Republicans and 2 of which are Democrats. The screening committee will then have the job of selecting the actual members of the commission who are tasked with the job of drawing the districts and the different groups that are going to vote within the state, both for state and federal elections. The way that this group will do that is they will have submitted to them from applicants. Anyone can apply. Basically, they may not all be accepted, but anyone can apply to be on what will be this final commission that makes the decisions on the redistricting. Now, there are some restrictions. That person cannot hold a present office, an elected office. They cannot be a family member of someone holding an office. They can't be involved in a campaign. And there's all kinds of different things. For example, Bryan could not be on this commission simply because his wife is in an elected position. I could not be on that commission because I had held an office within the last 6 years, and that's the thing they put in there. There's also some other qualifications. What this 4-member judge panel then will do is to go through all the applications and select 45 names which they feel meet the standards necessary to be on this particular commission. They will then, this gets complicated, but what they will then do is do a random draw, like out of a hat, pick 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 2 independents. That group then of 6 selected people become the first members of the new commission. And they will then, in a public meeting, select the other 9 members, which will be 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 3 independents. And anyone that they choose it gets placed on by a majority vote, but the vote has to have 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, and 1 independent as 3 of the 4 votes in order for that person to become a member. So what you end up with is a 15-member commission, which will then have the duty of selecting or redistricting the state of Ohio's state and federal districts. So it's long-winded, but I mean, that's trying to do the short version of it. That committee then they're paid $125 a day, which is set up in there. There are provisions in which you could, for anyone to be removed if they don't follow a moral or ethical policies and their procedures. They are entitled to hire attorneys and or other firms in order to give them advice on how to do the redistricting and so forth.
Well,
Okay.
I have a question, if I might ask, and that is, what's the expected outcome of successful gerrymandering?
Of successful gerrymandering?
Yes.
The outcome is to make see, to me, this is the irony of it. You're by outlawing gerrymandering, you're almost gerrymandering, but what the outcome is to have the districts more closely relate to the percentage Republicans, percentage Democrats that are in the state of Ohio and how they have voted. So that if, and there's actually within the bill itself, there's actually a limit. They want it to be within, I think it's less than 3% difference. But if there's, for example, if there's 57% of the state has voted Republican and 43% of the state has voted Democrat, you would expect then that 57% or within 3 points, you're never going to get it exact, of the districts will produce a Republican and 43% will produce a Democrat. It also will hopefully make more districts competitive and not to have so many districts that are, you don't even have to run, because if you're a Republican, you're going to win. Or if you're a Democrat, you're going to win. They want to have districts that are competitive, which,
It brings to mind a pogo statement. We've met the enemy and it's usins. When you look at this tool called gerrymandering.
yeah.
Bryan, as the spouse of an elected official, where do you come from on this issue?
Well, I mentioned this earlier. It's the way it was set up, and it's the way it's been done for years. And what's happened is our friends on the other side of the aisle, when the worm turned on this, and the Republicans basically have the governor, the House, and the Senate, and it looks like, they use the same rules. And it was always called redistricting. It was never given the gerrymandering negative connotation that they like to throw around. And for years, our friends on the other side of the aisle beat us over the head with that. And, there were times when, redistricting was done and, the Republicans were squealing like a stuck pig because they could never get anybody. And it was like, well, guys, you just got to get to the ballot box. You got to, you got to motivate your troops. You got to get them out there, because comes with the power of elected officials. This is the spoils that the victor gets to use. Is they get to use the levers of government and redistrict. And the first time this went around, because you had a governor that was a Republican and the other members were a majority, and they put those things through, nobody liked that. And yeah, it went to court, all that kind of stuff. It's just the way sausage is made. And to the notion that somehow we have to go through this process, and just listening to it right now, I've tried to read through the issue. I hope people, if they come to the polling place and try to read through the issue, they're going to be there all day. It's very convoluted. I don't believe it solves anything. If we're going to do something, then we really need to step back and say, what worked in the past? What's worked in the future? Maybe maybe our friends on the other side of the aisle just need to get out there and drive people to the voting box. That's what we were told for years as Republicans, when we couldn't get anybody elected in certain districts because they were redistricted away from the Republican Party. I will say that there are parts of this country that a Republican will never, ever get in office because, they've been redistricted out of any sort of opportunity to get any percentage of the vote. There are places in Maryland and Delaware and New Jersey and New York, you might as well just hang it up. Now, we could scream and say, oh, gerrymandering, but they sit there and they say the same thing. Well, you got to get your people out. This is what it's been. We agreed on this, that, whoever was in power had the opportunity to do these types of things. And I find it a little disingenuous now that all of a sudden we have to have a committee with 4 judges and they got to pick 45 people. And those 45 people get pulled out of the hat. We're going to have 2 Republicans. We're going to end up with the same thing. People are not going to be happy. So, the fact is it's part of the political process, whether you like it or not. It's like when people talk about packing the Supreme Court. It is what it is. That's the way government has been set up. You have the legislative branch, executive branch, and the judicial branch. and all three have to sort of get along. So I guess I'm sort of a no on this, just from the way it's been done in the past. And I find it a little disingenuous that all of a sudden we've got to change it to make it more fair, when in the past, we tried and tried and tried, and history will show that the Republicans were in the cold for many, many years, and there was a deaf ear when it came to redistricting and gerrymandering. So when the shoe's on the one foot, it's redistricting. When it's on the other foot, it's gerrymandering. So that's kind of how I fall on this issue. So
I have to add to this, though, that the whole issue is because this state in 2018 voted that we needed to change the system so as to not gerrymander. A commission was set up. They ignored the will of the people, and it was a majority, a large majority. So a lot of Republicans voted for this. It wasn't just Democrats. So that this commission then ignored that law, presented to the Supreme Court 7 times, and declared unconstitutional. Please watch the ad presently going on television by Maureen O'Connor, a Republican former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who actually had a hand in this new language that's there so that they can get it passed through, that says that we need to make the change. This is the will of the people. And I don't look at it as irony or sour grapes. I look at it as a party that refuses to follow the will of the people. We went out and voted for these changes. And the Republicans who had control want to maintain control. And so that's why they are against it.
Tom, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are voiced, I think, in the first couple of questions I asked. What's the outcome of gerrymandering? And is it a good thing for the state, for the country? And one of the first things to be said about that, who in the world has the greatest economy? Well, we're looking at it right now, the United States of America. Something's happening in the way we're doing business. One of the states that happens to be at the top of economics is Ohio. Do we have some troubles? Yes, we do. Are we a successful state economically? Yes, we are. And
so you're thinking
in the pudding
that the impact of the reapportionment the way it is right now is that whoever's in the majority wins.
Yes, along with a bit of confusion, because when you ask people, well, what is gerrymandering?
Yeah,
Look at the different answers you get.
Yeah. What I think about is that all human life forms seem to operate under self-interest. And the majority usually wins. I know you went to Kent State, Tom, so you're aware of the fact that Kent State is filled with black squirrels. They're all over the place. In fact, at one time I heard that Kent State was the only place in the world that had black squirrels. However, I noticed that every now and then a brown squirrel shows up at Kent State, and the black squirrels kill it. They just chase it and get rid of it. Now, here where I live in West Akron, the brown squirrels are in the majority, and every now and then a black squirrel shows up, and you see it running down the street with the brown squirrels chasing it and trying to wipe it out. That's human life, or that is life. All life forms operate under self-interest, and I think that politicians are no different. I think maybe in all this conversation, I'm beginning to think that issue 1 is a vote against self-interest. What do you think?
Well, you can't divorce self-interest. I mean, everybody acts within their own self-interest. I mean, I believe that's human nature. I can't believe that there's that many, folks out there that consider themselves, Jesuit monks. People go to work to earn a living. People vote. People vote people in that share their same interests. So I don't know if, self-interest is that bad of a term. I mean, Milton Friedman has talked about this on a variety of levels when it comes to the economics of self-interest. But I think for me, when I hear things like the will of the people, democracy, all that kind of stuff, I get a little tired of that because we forget what's gone on. And it would be nice. It would have been nice if, the folks that want to do this stepped up when they had the power. But that didn't happen. It didn't happen when the Democrats were running the state of Ohio. There was no talk of this. And that's what I go back to. I don't know if it's sour grapes or not, but institutional memory, of which, I think I've lived through some of it. There wasn't any olive branches or reaching across the aisle. It was, this is what it is, guys. So, we're really sorry, but that's the way the system is. So we were sort of bludgeoned with the system for years. But now that the other party is in, and the worm will turn on this. I'm sure the Democrats at some point in time will have it, and we'll be leaning on bills like this to somehow level the playing field and recognize the will of the people and all that kind of stuff. But it is what it is. I think in Ohio, do any other states vote on their judges? I mean, that's another topic we can take up, because a lot of people look at us like, what, you actually vote? Judges actually have a political party in the state of Ohio. But so, yeah, I'm sorry I don't feel strongly about this because of what's happened in the past. And maybe it would have gone a lot farther with me if when our friends on the other side of the aisle were in power, if this was an issue they felt so strongly about, they could have brought it up then. But it hasn't been, because now the Republicans have run the table on the state for some time. And now all of a sudden it's not redistricting, it's gerrymandering, and it subverts the will of the people and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It just sort of falls on deaf ears with me. So,
it only gets changed every 10 years. So it's not something that's brought up all the time. I think some of it came into play and when in the most recent changes, when we got the snake on the lake, and there's that one district that runs down through like southeastern Ohio. Even if you look at the divisions, I mean, we've been switched out as part of Medina County and switched out. Some of it just seems so blatant and ridiculous that it made it, perhaps I'm not sure why it came into play at that particular point. Also, Brad, very honestly, for most of my life, Ohio has been I shouldn't say that, but Governor Rhodes was here for a long time. I remember Kasich as a Democrat, but Ohio's been a fairly Republican state for a long time, not as to the extent that it is now.
The last Democrat I remember was Gilligan.
Gilligan, yeah.
I don't remember when that was exactly. But
that was in the 60s, I think, maybe. Late 60s, early 70s.
When we think about politics, we think about or democracy, that the majority wins. And now we've decided with issue 1 to wipe out the concept of majority and have everything evenly divided.
Well, I don't think they're looking to make it evenly divided. They're just wanting to reflect more the populace and the feelings of the state as a whole. I mean, remember, Ohio used to be the swing state. It used to be that they said if you didn't win Ohio, you couldn't win the election.
Yeah.
Ohio is no longer a swing state. And it's because, I think, of the way the districts have, or the redistricting has been done to make it so strongly one party as opposed to the other. Because even though there may be a large percentage of Democrats, it certainly isn't reflected in our representation.
Well, it doesn't affect the outcome of the national election, though.
Pardon me?
It doesn't affect the outcome of a national election. If we have a majority of Democrats, they're going to vote for the Democrat.
Well, we don't have a majority of Democrats. We have a majority of Republicans
Oh, excuse me, I misunderstood.
in the state. Yeah, yeah. It's just, it's not as large a gap as would indicate in state politics, at least.
Well, I think I'm going to keep my eye on the squirrels.
Hey, we've got black squirrels in Wadsworth.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen black squirrels.
We've got some black squirrels in Wadsworth.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. I've seen them. That old saw about Kent State being the only place in the world with black squirrels.
No.
I remember my father told me that once. And I said, Dad, I see black squirrels all the time.
Yeah.
He just didn't see any.
Yeah.
Well,
But I don't know if there's anything special about black squirrels.
They don't like brown squirrels. That's
Well, I mean,
We have devolved.
Well, there are gray
using the
squirrels too.
metaphor.
Has anyone seen any polling information on issue 1? How it's fair? I mean, I haven't seen any.
no, I haven't either. And we're not going to be able to see it anytime soon. So we're all done for this week, and I will see you all a week from Thursday. 2 weeks from today.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.